increasing in area and also increasing in weight. Okay, so hypertrophy only will happen when there's more synthesis than degradation. Okay, that's the basic math behind it. So we are never going to be able to just keep synthesizing. Your body has to degrade and then synthesize, degrade and synthesize. Just as when your synthesis trumps your degradation, you start getting bigger. Okay, so we will talk about why that's important. So when you talk about hypertrophy, at which level does it happen? Hypertrophy actually happens at the myofibrillar level. So you look at this. This is where hypertrophy actually happens. And every one of the myofibrils that enlarge eventually causes you to see a gross enlargement in the muscle size. Everything that you need to know about hypertrophy comes from this. Okay? Because when you understand this, you unlock everything else. Okay? Now, when we talk about mechanisms of hypertrophy now we're actually explaining why actually hypertrophy happens to the muscle. Okay? And we know there's three predominant understanding of theories behind it. Okay? So now we know that we used to talk about mechanical loading, metabolic stress, and muscle damage. And if you can see this picture, they are all of three different sizes. The circles are three different sizes because the value of each of this mechanism is based on the size. So mechanical loading is the prevailing theory. Okay, the thing that we are actually hunting for. Okay, followed by metabolic stress. Now muscle damage is called into question in the past years. Okay, we are starting to question the necessity of muscle damage. Okay, alright. So as we progress, I will explain why we are talking about that. Okay, now let's move on to mechanical loading. Now, what is mechanical loading? So let me refine what it's trying to say. Okay, alright. So mechanical loading is basically the tension felt by the muscle. Okay, whenever you're lifting anything, there is tension. Now, does this provide any kind of mechanical loading? Yes, it does. Yes. It's just a very minute amount for what I can do. Yes. Okay, this is probably like a 1% RM. 1% of my 1 RM. Okay, so it's very, very low. Okay, so if you don't reach a sufficient amount of mechanical loading, a sufficient amount of tension in that muscle, the muscle is not going to respond very well for the tension. That means it's not going to hypertrophy for the tension. Now, the first 8 to 10 weeks of your training, okay, for us probably not. Okay, for us in this room, probably we don't have this anymore. But someone who's beginning, okay, you have new clients coming to you, they'll tell you that I'm getting stronger, but I don't see myself getting bigger. Okay, why is that? Okay, because the first 8 to 10 weeks of your training program, of the person's training program, is actually improvement in strength outcomes. Okay, alright, what they're actually going to see is their strength starts jumping up. Okay, some people as much as 50% will increase within the first 8 weeks. Why is that? Is because, why do you think is happening? Ben, why do you think the... Alright, so mechanical tension, as I said earlier, the type 2 fibers are going to respond a lot more to mechanical tension than the type 1 fibers. Not that type 1 fibers don't hypertrophy, the ability to hypertrophy is not fantastic. Okay, it can hypertrophy, but just not to the extent of the type 2 fiber. Okay, alright, so you guys, if you look at this image, right, you will see that hypertrophy only happens when there's load, okay, plus the nutrients required for the synthesis. The load is the initial signal, and once it changes the biochemical signals from the mechanical signals changes to biochemical signals, and we need to build protein, you need to supply the raw material. Okay, the raw material is your amino acids. So if you only do this, you'll use whatever existing proteins you have, and then you can't expand further. So in a study where you see where people are doing resistance training, but protein is subpar, not enough, okay, you are not going to hypertrophy. Your hypertrophy will be stalled because tak ada bahan mentah. Okay, so amino acids need to be pumped in order for you to build more. I think that's pretty simple.